I read Man's Search for Meaning a couple of weekends ago when I went away for a digital detox, turned my phone off, 36, 48 hours offline, man, and I read that book cover to cover, and that was the second time I'd read it. And, the first time I read it was a number of years ago, and since then it's been in my top 5 book recommendations. But reading it again the second time, I was in a different mindset, I was in a different headspace. It was a couple of years later, I'd grown, I'd developed, and I took completely different lessons from it. A lot of the same things resonated, but then there was some other things that really stood out for me. Has that happened for you, listening back to our first conversation?
Yeah, for sure. There's probably been 3 main points that every time I sort of recheck myself, and I'm like, well, you thought this last time, like, and you drifted off track. First one is don't go off other people. So, like, this Instagram world, and I tell myself this all the time. Yet through the stuff you watch and view on social media, or you see these people living their best lives or being really successful, and even though you tell yourself not to sort of judge yourself off them, subconsciously you do take it all in, and sometimes you just need a little reevaluation of like, well, these are my goals, and I'm actually progressing towards them very well, and I've hit certain goals, and so recheck yourself there. The other one is just keep sort of like pedaling. I know we said that, like, just normally when you quit or you break on an arduous military task, the finish was actually just round the corner. 9 times out of 10, you put your hand up and say I failed, and actually they're like, mate, it was 100 meters around the corner. You would have been made that march or whatever. And the third was, and this maybe shows my cavalier attitude, but like, it doesn't need to be perfect. Like, remember saying, like, on the sniper's course, like, you're not gonna go in perfect time, hit all your checkpoints, be in great order, and as your instructor sort of said, and this resonates with me, like, if you're not a bit of a cunt, you probably shouldn't be on the course by now. Like, it doesn't have to be pretty, it doesn't have to be perfect. Get there, achieve your goal, and then you reconvene at the end. How many attacks have you been through? Everyone comes through, perfectly dry with their chin strap right, upright. You're going to get a bit spread out in the fight. You have the moment, reconvene. We used to call it the British Army a condor moment. Gather yourself together, work out what you have got, what you haven't got, work on points, and then you move on. Just because you're not green and muddy and haven't slept for a couple of days doesn't mean you can't have that attitude, like with normal tasks in life. Like, sometimes I think, because you're well dressed and you've had a shower today, you everything has to be perfect. It doesn't, man. In whatever you do, like, you've achieved your goal, just constantly reassess, but don't be too hard on yourselves. I think sometimes we go the other way, and you mentioned the pendulum. So, like, we've gone, the pendulum swings one way, you may be drinking too much, you're being undisciplined, but if the pendulum goes the other way, and you're not going to eat sugar, and you're going to have 4 hours sleep and do 2 hours meditation and a 20-kilometer run, and then you don't hit that goal, then you beat yourself up again. Like, this isn't realistic. Realistic task, should I say? And also, it's not going to be pretty. Just achieve your aim. You've got there. Good.
Yeah, 100%, man. Progress is much better than perfection. If you can, keep doing those 1%ers every day, that is going to, that those 1%ers, like, that adds up, man. That becomes compounded interest, right? Like, that's where the magic is, bro. And this is where people go wrong. Is like, they need to have all the fucking answers before they take that first step, where it's like, you're never going to have the perfect plan, or even if you do, like, what do you say? Like, no plan survives contact with the enemy. Right, so, like, it's great to have that plan. It's great to have the standard operating procedures, the actions on for certain scenarios. But at the end of the day, like, those are a set of guidelines to get you moving, give everyone an understanding of what they're working towards and what needs to happen at certain points. But once shit starts fucking happening, like, you need to be flexible, you need to be adaptable, and you need to be able to kind of work within those guidelines, but, kind of bend the rules a little bit to suit the circumstances.
Yeah, I totally agree. What would you say your say 3 points are from that podcast, or the issues discussed?
Probably one of the first things that comes to mind is, what we both spoke about when we were going through the sniper's course, and we're like, fuck, man, we are not going to pass this course. How the fuck can anyone pass this course? This is so ridiculously hard. right? But then again, it's that incremental change. You start learning things, and you start implementing those things, and those little pieces of the jigsaw puzzle start coming together, and you start building, and then all of a sudden, like, you're putting it all together, and now you're passing, and now you're like, fuck, that how 2 weeks ago I was failing everything, and I didn't think anyone was going to pass this course, and now all of a sudden, like, you're starting to put those pieces of the jigsaw puzzle together, and things are starting to work out, and the plan's starting to fall into place. And that was a big one for me. Another big takeaway right now at this stage is the transition process as well, which is something that I've still got mates going through that process now, getting out of the military. There's still no when as we mentioned, man, like, when you join the army, you get taught how to become a soldier from a civilian, but then when you get out, you don't get taught how to reintegrate back into civilian society. And I think that's a big piece of the jigsaw puzzle that's missing as well. And this is something that will come up again as we go through this conversation with what you guys are doing with Head Up Charity, and that's why I'm aligned with the Swiss 8 boys and what they're doing, because that is a big piece of the puzzle that once we start putting that stuff into place, and we give people this education prior to them getting out, or within kind of 6 months of them getting out, give them some expectations on what they can, what they essentially are going to come up against, and situations that they're going to find themselves in, and these thoughts that are going to come into their mind, and some of the problems that we've had going through the transition process. Like, once we can start giving these guys these lessons and prepare them ahead of time, I think it's definitely going to make that transition process a lot easier, and it's going to help people kind of manage their minds a little bit more, so that they're not falling into these fucking pits of depression where the wheels fall off when they stop doing the things that made them such good soldiers.
Yeah, I think key point to what you just said there as well is, my mind was racing as you were saying that. There is no set answer. There is no set things that you do. Everyone's different. Everyone's going to go back to different backgrounds. Your family background was very different to mine growing up. That's going to have an impact. Where do you settle when you leave? But I think this is where Swiss 8 and Head Up are leading in this, and this is where we are going to be the world leaders in this. It's giving you the tools to cope with it. Like, we're not going to jump on you, and because soldiers don't want that either. I don't want to be mummy cuddled. Like, I know what to do. Tell me how to do it, and I'll do it. I think so. Like you said, standing back, giving guys the tools, picking them up where they need to be picked up, but giving them this sort of routine that's going to put them on the best possible course, and then letting them find their own way. I think too many charities, or in the veterans mental health sector, they're not on the radar until it's too bad, and then you have to jump on them, and it's like sort of critical.
It's that reactive
exactly
model.
Where rather than a proactive model, where I think Swiss 8 and Head Up, where we find a groove, are going to be much more beneficial to your average sort of service leader or serving member, for when the wheels fall off. It's sort of like giving yourself an MOT and keeping on the right track,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's principles driven, man. As you said, most soldiers, like, they don't necessarily need to be, fucking have their hand held through the process. It's just like, hey, these are the principles. These are the different methods that you can choose to achieve that outcome. Pick whatever fucking works for you. But it's just about giving them those principles, making them understand what those principles are about, what the desired outcome is, and then give them the tools to be like, hey, these are the options to achieve that desired outcome. Choose the one that's appropriate for you right now. Because, you could say fucking, like, yin style yoga is a great tool for helping manage your mind, drive the parasympathetic nervous system, get into a relaxed state after being in a highly stressed state, or on edge for a certain period of time in a sympathetic state, that fight or flight state all the time. But going into a yin yoga class and sitting there for an hour, stretching, focusing on your breathing, being in your own fucking head, that might not be a good option for some people. That might drive them wild, man.
Yeah, I totally agree. And as you said, you've got people now leaving, and so do I. And I could talk about it all day with anyone who comes across sort of WhatsApp or whatever. But like I said, your answer's different for everyone. And I still don't have the answer myself. I'm actually thinking, if you ask me now to just sort of define what the score is there, I couldn't tell you. Some people are sort of, my opinion or assessment would be like, right, you've got to almost let him burn out at the minute. He's not gonna learn. He's not gonna listen to you right now. He needs to blow some steam off. Obviously, if he's doing that and drink and drugs, you need to be around him and have a little word, and try and veer him off that. But some guys get out and they've got this mega project, they're straight into that, or some guys just go really, which I think actually you need to just get out and try and chill out for a bit, and without sounding too spiritual, you need to find yourself. You need to find who you are. You left as Corporal Koba, who had commendations for bravery in Afghanistan. You're a sniper. And actually, if you were to meet new people or, try and talk to chicks, that would be your talking point. That's what you talk about. Not that you're trying to impress them. That's who you are. And, it got...
That's your identity.
Yeah, that's your identity. And then you leave. And it's sort of like, 2 years after I left, it sort of was like, yeah, it's going to come up about Afghanistan. It's going to come up about you getting shot in the neck. It's going to come up about you being a sniper. But, bro, that's not who you are anymore. Like, be proud, and it's going to come up, of course, or what did you do before you did this, or, but that's not who you are. And I think when you start to accept that, like, Afghanistan's over, like, shut the door on it. Take life lessons is very important, but move on. Especially guys who've had a lot of people, who lost a lot of guys in Afghan or Iraq or whatever conflict they're in. It feels like a betrayal to shut the door on it. I felt terrible for my friend Jay, who passed away. I thought, I don't want to move on from Afghanistan. I'm not going to forget him. And then you feel guilty almost, And this is just one issue guys are going to face. I don't want to move on from that. It's who I am, I'm not going to forget him or her. It's tough.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a great point, man. Like, it's not like you have to close the door on that and it's like, all right, that chapter's over. I'm never going to think about that again. It's like, all right, I can't go back in time. I can't fucking change any of these circumstances. What I am going to do is accept that that's what happened, but I'm also going to accept that I'm not that person anymore, or that person that I was, those decisions that I made during that time have shaped the person I've now become. And I've also got an opportunity to make decisions right here and right now that's going to shape the fucking person that I'm going to become in the future. And I think that's a big part of it, man, is, we need to look at, yes, we need to look at the past, because everything in the past has brought us up to this point and it's made us who we are, and it's shaped our values and, and our personality and our character. Okay, but then we need to also look at the now. All right, what can we do right now that's going to influence the person that I want to become in the future? We need to look at all aspects, past, future, and present. But the majority of the time, we need to be living in the present. And that's where a lot of guys go wrong, man, is they're living in the past and they are still that soldier who served in Afghanistan or did 3 deployments and, fucking had their mate die in their arms as they loaded him onto a helicopter or whatever it might be, man. Like, we don't need to forget that stuff, but we also need to accept that stuff.
Yeah, you do. And it gets to the point as well where it's like, you paid your respects, but he doesn't want you. You're now making this about you. You now need to move on. You need to do what's good for him. He hasn't. There's a famous quote that I sent to Paul in the beginning of Head Up, but it said, I think that the most important part of a veteran's life is when he starts thinking about those who died and starts living for them instead. Like, you've got this great opportunity. They died, you didn't, man. You've got to do them proud, because he's sat there, wherever he is, whatever you believe in, and he's looking at you like, come on, man. Like, it was me, it wasn't you. Like, you've got to make the most of this now. Make me proud. And I mean, that I imagine resonates with a lot of soldiers, and there's enough to G anyone up to sort of be like, yeah, okay, got you. Like, it's a brilliant quote.
Yeah, man, that's a really, really good point. I'm recording this on, what date is this? Monday, the 11th of April. So Today, actually, I recorded an episode where I read off some of my favorite passages from that book, Man's Search for Meaning, because it has been so impactful for me. And something that Viktor Frankl said once he, got through the concentration camps and, was free and like started rebuilding his life again. He had a doctor come in who was super depressed, been depressed for a couple of years. His wife had died, and the doctor come in and is basically like, I need to talk to someone. I need to manage my mind. I need some tools to get me out of this funk that I'm in. And he was super depressed that he'd lost his wife and he'd been mourning. And Viktor Frankl developed this technique called logotherapy, and it basically means like find a meaning for life, find a meaning in suffering. And he says to this doctor, and he goes, "Okay, now let's say that the tables were turned and you had died, and right now your wife would be mourning you. How would you feel about that?" And he goes, "Oh, I couldn't have that happen." And basically went, "I would prefer to have this suffering than for my wife to have that suffering."
Yeah.
And he basically just thanked him and walked out, man. And when you change your mindset and the way that you think about things, that can really impact like your attitude, your mindset, and how you process things moving forward.
Yeah. What a simple flip. Like, imagine you paid £250 or dollars for this session, and you walk in and he's like, "Just think this." And it's so, and when something just clicks sometimes, you just walk straight out again.